You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What do you think is the first statement game for Syracuse basketball? The first one where you're like, we'll know about this team after this.
Great question.
So come out right away with the hard questions.
Yeah, gosh, you're supposed to feed me like easy cream puffs. But thanks for having me on again, buddy. I appreciate it. And obviously, like you, very excited for the season. And yes, being picked number 11th in the ACC Preseason Medium Poll was lame, but it also means nothing. So with that said, I'm intrigued by Monday night's game against Le Moyne. It's obviously nearby Le Moyne, their second year in Division I. But I don't know. No disrespect to the Dolphins, I don't think Syracuse is going to have a lot of trouble with them. Their second game is against Colgate. So more than a week later, they have a week, more than a week off. They've had trouble with Colgate in recent years. And Colgate's been I'm not sure where they're projected in the Patriot League this year. I haven't really delved into that yet, but they're a good team. And
you can keep talking. I will look up the Patriot League projected.
Yeah, you do that. I mean, I normally do that before I do previews and stuff, and I haven't gotten there yet. But they're a tricky team. But if we're moving beyond that, clearly the first one that we're really looking at is in the Legends Classic. I think it's the week before Thanksgiving, and
gotcha.
they play two.
All right. Colgate is projected to finish atop to be the leader in the Patriot League. So
no surprise there. I mean,
they are the four-time defending Patriot League champions.
Yeah, they're in the NCAA tournament. They give teams tough outs as like a 13 or 14. They're extremely well coached. And haven't they beaten Syracuse? Was it twice in the last 3 years?
Twice in the last three.
And the other one in
the last three.
Yeah, the other one we had to come back from. Yeah, so that's not going to be a gimme. And Colgate's not going to come into the dome and be like scared of Syracuse. Oh, it's so I mean, do I think Syracuse will win the game? I do. But it's not a gimme. But then if we're talking about getting into Power 4, Power 5, whatever the number of conferences are that are powers these days, I lose track. Obviously playing Texas in that first game in the Legends Classic, they're preseason, I believe, top 20. They're going to be one of the better teams in the Big 12, and everyone loves to talk about the Big 12 being
no, SEC, right?
Oh God, they're in the SEC now. Oh my God, such a moron. Gee, I haven't had enough coffee today. You're right. Well, the SEC is going to be really good this year too. I mean, Alabama is going to be a top 5 team. Texas is a good team. Obviously you've got Kentucky with Pope and Cal and Arkansas and all these other, but I think that'll be a good barometer test for Syracuse. I mean, they certainly had some tough non-conference games last year in Maui, and did not fare super well, but they were early season. They had a roster of mainly sophomores, and they played Tennessee and was it Gonzaga? But they had some tough matchups. So the Legends Classic, I think the second game is either Texas Tech or St. Joseph's.
Yeah. So we don't know who they're going to play unless
right. And Texas Tech, I think was receiving votes in the preseason poll. So but beyond that, I mean, there's that game against Tennessee. I believe it's the first week in December.
December 3rd, they go to Tennessee for the ACC SEC Challenge. Last year, Syracuse caught a break. They got about as easy of an SEC team as
they got LSU.
The home game was at home, and it was against like the worst team in the SEC last year, which was LSU. That's about as dimmy as it gets. And guess what? They took advantage of it. So this year, the schedule makers are like, that's cute. We're going to give you Tennessee on the road. Thank you so much.
On the road. Whoa. So, yeah, that'll be a tough one. I mean, Tennessee did lose some of its players from a team that went to the Elite Eight last year, but they're still
12th in the country.
They're a preseason top 15 team, and that'll be. I mean, I'm not saying Syracuse can't potentially win, but then again, they lost to Tennessee in Maui, which was on a neutral court last year. But I just think this team is more veteran. And, that was my biggest thing with the team last year. I mean, dude, they won 20 games for the first time in a regular season in a decade. In Autry's first year with a tough non-conference, some injuries, and a bunch of sophomores. So, like, I have no gripe. I mean, obviously, they missed the NCAA tournament for the third straight year, but my biggest gripe with Syracuse last year is when they lost big. Now, I don't know. Maybe it'd be worse if they would lose a bunch of games by like a buzzer beater. Maybe that would stink even more. But
no,
you know what I'm saying?
It would suck, but their tournament case would be a lot better, and they would be a lot higher in the net.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing with – I'm not saying Syracuse is going to go undefeated in the regular season, but I do think like a game against Tennessee on the road with a more veteran roster, assuming kind of everyone's kind of on the same page, I'm not saying they're going to win, but I feel like they have – be more, and some of those losses last year, they were competitive until like the second part of the second half.
So,
and then it kind of,
I guess the better way to phrase it is be competitive for 40 plus minutes.
For the whole, yeah, exactly.
Against Tennessee, they had a lead in the first half. The game was close with like 5 minutes left. If you go look back on it, the game was close. Like the game was in the balance against Tennessee last year with like 5 minutes left. And then Tennessee goes on a massive run.
Yeah, they just closed it out. They crushed them. Yeah,
they win by nearly 20, I think, and that hurts your net. It looks like a blowout, even though it wasn't. But that's where the score can sometimes lie to you. And I'm with you on this. When I look at Syracuse's schedule, I say, okay, first of all, Colgate on November 12th. That's a home game. What I want to see. You got to take the next step. Last year, I just wanted them to win. Just win the game.
Good. Get over the hump. Yeah.
Just get over the hump. Enough with this Colgate losing, okay? I know they're a tournament team, but they're still in the Patriot League. Come on. I don't even know if they've won a tournament game since they've been in it 4 consecutive years.
They've had a couple where they gave the higher seed trouble, but I don't think
they've won.
In a first
and I was sick of it. They beat them last year. That was good. This year, I want you to basically mop them. Like, how about that? Like, we'll if you can beat them by 10 plus, like we'll have a better idea. Texas is going to be a good one. Mm-hmm. But I think I think the games that are out of conference that could go either way, kind of like a Maryland at the Barclays Center.
Yeah, that could be an interesting
one because Maryland is one of those teams. I think they were receiving votes for top 25. They should be a pretty good team this year.
They were.
Those are teams that you could be competing with come tournament time. And by that, I mean, like, you're trying to argue, like, should this team get in? Should this team not get in? Like, they could be both on the bubble. Maybe, hopefully for Syracuse's sake, we're talking about seeding. Like, should they be a 6?
Right.
Should they be an 8?
Are they going to be a 6 or an 8? Right.
Yeah. Hopefully it's more of that discussion. And you're
right. But no, Maryland's
one of those teams. Like, how did we do against Maryland? So any one of those games to me are ultra important. And I guess you have to find a way with Duke, Virginia, or North Carolina all being at home this year. You can't get swept in that 3-game series. I think if you can at least win 1, cross your fingers for 2, I think you're in good shape because they don't play any of those teams on the road.
No, they get them all at home. I think
they get them all at home.
Virginia is the last one of the season, right? Is that? Did I make?
Virginia is the last game. They're the last game of the regular season. Yeah, March.
And who knows what's going to be going on with them? Frankly, with the coaching change. So
I want to speak on that. Little side note here, and then we'll get to season expectations in general.
Sure.
I understand what Tony Bennett said. I believe he resigned because he's like sick of the current college game and everything like that. I get it. 2 weeks before the season started.
Wow, there was some
now in March or now in April. Like, why couldn't you do it then?
Sure, and that's a fair point, Jackson. From what I read, I don't pretend to know Tony Bennett or people in Virginia. From what I read, is he didn't 100% know until he I don't know if he had a fall break and he was with his wife and just reflecting, and that's when he finally knew. But I think he had inklings before that, based again on what I've read. But I think the reason
I've seen that too.
Why he waited till right before the season, I think, from what I've read, is to ensure that one of his assistants was named the interim coach for this year.
That makes sense.
If he resigned months ago,
then they probably go on a
national search and brought someone in. Now, but to your point, some people are like, well, is that really fair to the team? There's logical discussion points on either side, and I think he's a really good guy, and it's sad to see that
he makes his own decision. It's best for him. I'm just pointing out, like,
it's sad to see. No, you're right. Nothing has changed. It's been this way. I mean, obviously, NIL is getting more and more prevalent, and there's going to be revenue sharing coming up. But the portal's been the portal for a couple of years now, and conference realignment is ongoing. But, like he was one of the guys, like he was a coach, he's back to Washington State before Virginia, before all this. So, like, Coach Autry mentioned when asked about it, I think at the media day, a couple Fridays ago, and he said, well, for me, I just came in last year as the head coach. So this is like nothing new for me. So like but like for a Tony Bennett, he just decided it wasn't for him anymore. And it's like, Jay Wright, retired relatively young, and the landscape's different, man, for better, for worse. I think players should be able to earn endorsement income from NIL, and I don't have an issue if they even earn revenue share, but there's going to be so many more changes, and I hope it doesn't affect, non-revenue Olympic sports. And, and you and I are obviously diehard college sports fans. Syracuse is our alma mater. We love Syracuse, but it's a different job now. You're recruiting at the high school level, out of the portal, overseas, but then you also have to retain your own team. Like it's just different. And maybe Tony just got, there could be an argument made that maybe he should have said something sooner for his players' sake or whatever, or maybe he did, or I don't know. But I also understand why he did what, and he seems like a pretty stand-up guy. So like, it's just a shame. It's a shame. But anyway, Getting back to Syracuse, we'll have to see. Virginia was pricked, I think, like 5th in the ACC preseason.
Yeah, I think they were pretty up there.
Wake Forest was up there, and Clemson, and then Virginia. Yeah, I got it up here, right here, buddy. Yeah, Virginia was 5th. I don't know that we'll see they've had a couple of, I believe, 2025 guys either decommit or hit the portal or whatever. And so who knows what they're going to, and I wish them well. I mean, who knows with them. I do agree with you that given that they only play Virginia, Duke, and UNC at home, it'd be nice I think it personally would be lovely to get 2 out of 3.
Oh, I think we would all love to. I think right now at this very moment, we'll sign for 1.
Sure, of course. And, again, but given the way Virginia is kind of in flux, it's like I want to look at that as like, even though Virginia's kicked Syracuse butt a lot in recent years, like it's going to be different. So like I look at that as I'm feeling better about that, although it is the last game of the regular season, so it's a long time. But like, Duke and UNC are obviously preseason prognostication-wise the cream of the crop, and they both have really good rosters. But Syracuse beat UNC at home last year.
They did.
They could do it again. Duke looks loaded, but they have a lot of new pieces, and Syracuse is going to come to play with that, with a former Syracuse player on Duke's roster, and I wish him well, but I hope Syracuse kicks Duke's butt. Malik can go for 40 and 40 if Syracuse wins the game. It's fine. But the Syracuse, I think on paper has a pretty favorable ACC schedule. I'm not saying it's easy.
I mean, the fact that you only have to play Duke once, Carolina once, and they're both at home. I mean, we loop Virginia there as well because, Syracuse just doesn't win in Virginia. And Virginia's typically a very good team anyway. So it's pretty favorable, the fact that you get all 3 of those games at home. And yes, they got to go to the West Coast a few times, but you know what?
They do.
Cry me a river, all right? Like,
well, everyone's got to deal with that. So
they all got to deal with it. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. You know why? Because a lot of these guys, they want to go pro, right?
They're going to be traveling a lot when they go pro.
They're going to have to do it when they're a pro. So, like, do it. You might as well do it now. Like, figure it out. I don't care about West Coast. The fact that you get Duke and Carolina and Virginia at home, I think is very favorable for Syracuse. So that's the most important games on the schedule.